Well, I want to thank you all for joining us. I'm Mark Schumacher, CEO of the Home Furnishings Association, and this is one of our weekly webinars, which we love to present because we're always listening to what you, our members and retailers, want to talk about. And every time we try to bring you a subject that has been on top of mind. And this is really one I think that's unique today and interesting because we're talking about retail store renovations and expansions and growing. And in the midst of the last couple of years of COVID, there's been a lot of that going on, and some successful and some not so successful. And so we're really going to look for a lot of best practices today, things you should be thinking about. So it's really kind of a cool subject. So I'm going to introduce you to our panel here in just a second, but I want to do a little bit of housekeeping at the first out of the gates here. Number one, bottom of the screen, Q&A button. If you have a question you'd like us to try to get to, please do that. Type it in there. We'll do our best to get to it. So that's number one. Number two, this webinar is going to be recorded like they all are, and we post them at myhfa.org/webinar, which is just our library of any subject you can think of. We know people that utilize this in their stores for team meetings or planning meetings, things of that sort. So please take advantage of that. When this is done, you'll be getting that link specifically sent to you. And I also always like to thank our friends at Synchrony. They are our thought leader sponsors of our education programs. And that, of course, includes our webinars as well. Okay, good. Got all that sort of stuff out of the way. I want to introduce you to the panel today. We have Jennifer McGee joining us. She's the founder and creative director for retail in the city, designer, architect. This is somebody that's redone just about 3 million square feet of retail space. That's a fair amount. So Jennifer, we thank you for being here today. I know we're going to get a lot of great insights from you. Also, we have Jordan Barrick. He's the Chief Operating Officer for Quality Home in Mesquite, Texas. To give you a little bit of an idea, they just opened up a huge store in an old theater spot, and it's gorgeous. But obviously, they've got some lessons to help teach us as well. And we have Liana Runco joining us. She's a visual merchandising manager and buyer for Old Brick, up in the Albany, New York, the whole upper section of New England, incredibly fast growing. They've got 9 stores now. This is just a company that really only came to be truly in its current form about 3 years ago. And I should point out to you that they've grown to the point where they jumped into the top 100 this year. Incredible. So, Liana, I thank you for being here as well. Appreciate that very, very much. There's a lot that we can kind of ways that we can sort of get into this, but here's what I'd like to do first. Let's just talk about, and I'm going to start, Jordan, I'm going to start with you. Can you just talk about the standpoint of to set the tone for any of the other retailers watching this? So what was that point for you guys where it was like, okay, here's this opportunity. We're going to take this and we're going to do this. I mean, what was the sort of the final piece that said we need to step out and make this investment and do this huge renovation and make this big move?
Yeah, so we were operating out of around 13,000 feet. We had been there. The company was founded in 75, and so out of like 1,000 or 1,500 square feet, and just kept growing in this shopping center. The shopping center in the area started to deteriorate dramatically. It went from maybe a B location to a C or a D. The ownership of the shopping center changed. We kept trying to do, we would take care of our own tenant improvements. And so, in fancy word, we went and we painted stuff and paid for it ourselves and did a little bit of rehab, invested, I'd say 8 years ago or 9 years ago, invested maybe $50,000, which we thought was going to be 10, but ended up being 50 into the rehab of the place. We saw business go up, and then we just hit a plateau. It became very difficult to get people in the building, whereas like some of the smart retailers are 5% advertising. We were ended up 10, 12, sometimes 15% to try to drive people through the door. And then over a period of really about 8 years playing back and forth with this building purchase, we went at it 3 times trying to scrape it together and figure out how to get this thing under contract, and be at the place where we could swing it and do the rehab and all of it. So, and the place we're in now was an old movie theater. It's about 31,000 feet on the ground and 8,000 up where the projections system was, and that's where we have all our offices, where I'm out of right now. So it ended up being, for us, it's massive. I mean, there's lots of stores on the call, I'm sure, that are 75 or 100,000 square feet, but for us, we wanted to be here and figure it out.
And, I love about what you just said is I can't imagine there's not everybody on here didn't at least relate to one of those things as far as in their current space and how they've been fighting a lot of these different hurdles to get over to just to try to run the business more successfully and smoothly. But good stuff. Now Liana's interesting. I'm going to give people a little bit of background here. So Michael Fiacco, your owner, and his mom used to own Bennington Furniture, and they bought Old Brick. And the decision was that it was really what he felt was a sustainable brand and model. So rather than turning them all into Bennington Furniture, it became Old Brick. Now you're in a little different situation. You have an aggressive ownership that's looking for new spots. So maybe from you, I'd like to get an idea about briefly about what that whole lack of a better term, culture is like to be in an environment where it's growth and decisions made. And man, you've got to, you've been handed, many times, hey, here's this space, here's this city. Now make it happen. You talk a little bit about that and some of the culture behind that. That'd be great.
Absolutely. So Michael is a strong believer in hiring the right people for the job and gives us the independence to do so. So there's an element of decisiveness and the ability to make those decisions within 30 seconds, not 2 weeks. So that ownership too, that many of us in leadership roles take is as if it's our own business. So we're thinking big picture every day, not just what our daily responsibilities are. So when we go into a store renovation or a brand new location, it's not just me thinking about merchandising or the VP of sales, just thinking about sales staff and all of that. Everyone's crossed over in departments, and the level of support that all of us give each other is incredible. So I would say for us, when we're looking into the new locations, we're looking for vacancy, right? Obviously big box vacancy stores. We're looking to purchase the real estate. So our plan of action really is to own the plaza, leverage the business into the plaza, and then be able to get the growth happening very quickly. So we're looking at a very tight timeline. So we got into Amsterdam, in and out of Amsterdam within 30 days. So between purchase, renovation, and opening. And obviously, a big part of that is the planning ahead of time. So Michael had the foresight to pull the permits before we actually closed. So depending on your municipality, it could take longer or shorter, right? Some work faster than others.
Right.
So there's lots of things like that that really put gas in our tank and be able to push through. So
two takeaways there that I just got to pause switch for a second that I think are fantastic. Number one, I love that forward thinking of, look, you're going to need permits. Start that process, right away, because if you start once you finally, take over, you're now already behind the 8 ball. But you said something really interesting, is that the culture, and this is maybe what I would call the culture of an expanding business, is that you each treat it like it's your own business. So I love the level of ownership that you're talking about there. And Jennifer, I want you to jump in because you've heard 2 unique stories here.
Yes.
But in the same respect, some little gold here. What are some of the key things, since you're the person that works with the retailers to do this,
Yes.
and they vary? What are those couple of things that are just critical for a furniture retailer to have in their mindset in order to be successful, whether it's a reno or whether it's a new purchase?
Well, like you were saying, I think it's the permitting is something that a lot of times people sort of push back or don't get on top of as early, and it can cause significant delays, even if you're not doing a whole lot on the renovation side. If you're even touching your exterior facade, even putting up sometimes just new signage, you have to run that and go through the city and get approval. And the city can sit on these things for months. We've worked on projects that have taken 2 years to basically get built and open because there's just so much delay on the city side. They do pushback. You've got to maybe go in front of another committee. You might have to present to the overall council. So again, it depends on how aggressive or how much you're doing. If you're just doing some repainting on the interior, obviously that's not, you know, a big deal. I'm sure Jordan with his renovation had to go through quite a few hoops, and, you know, especially if you're taking a building like a theater and trying to convert it to a retail store. So if the original use of the building is different than retail, then that's a whole different process typically that you have to go through as well, which adds a lot of complication. So I agree, if you can get out in front of that, that's the only way that you can kind of move more quickly, you know, through that whole thing. So that's definitely something to consider.
You know, and Jordan, something that that Jennifer just mentioned, you know, is about the fact that you know, not every available retail space. I mean, you know, Leanna was talking about, you know, we know that big box stores are going out of business, so there's all this available space. You know, a movie theater, and you know, for complete candor here, I know your father-in-law really well, and I knew that it's like, you know, there are certain walls in a theater that weren't going to work for a retail space. So I guess there's that part of it right out of the gates where you have to, if you're going to expand into something, it's not a one size fits all, right? You guys had to take into consideration, talk a little bit about that in the planning, about how much you were going to invest in just retrofitting the space to be able to work as a retail store.
100%. I mean, it was we knew, same deal as Liana, we wanted to own the real estate. We wanted to do that, buy that, and keep that separate from the furniture side. And so trying to get the right price on that. Our area, Mesquite, Texas, is Southeast Dallas County. We're Dallas, Fort Worth. There is no place to go. We were shopping for years trying to find a spot that wasn't, you know, crummy places. Even the place that we were in before, which was completely run down, they just, you know, new ownership. Now let's try to charge you $23 a square foot for no reason. Like, they did nothing to it. So we were rocking a hard place trying to figure out where to go. And so we were like, okay, well, let's figure out, can we swing a mortgage with the price of the building and a rehab on it? And we knew that we found out through the process, some things kicked in. When you go over 50% of the value of the property, improvement changes a lot of stuff. We didn't really think through what Jennifer just said, as far as, hey, the different use. We knew there would be some, but it's a big empty box that has these big walls that we've got to get rid of or figure out. We thought, you know, maybe knock some out or put in, you know, something. But we found out, well, in the 90s, they used to use, they decided the roof should sit on these walls. So we, you know, had to get structural engineer and put in crazy amounts of money just on these holes. But, you know, kudos to the planning process and Stan's vision, the CEO, to be able to say, like, no, we got to be able to see all the way across. It doesn't have to be fully open like some big box, you know, other retailer, but you need to be able to see all the way across. So if we got to that place, and we hired a designer, similar to Jennifer, it's working with someone who knows what they're doing, that's a retail store planner, you know, or if you have this skill set for it, like Liana, we did not. So trying to find someone that can consult and advise, and I've got the plan up behind me on my glass and look at it every day, to be able to set this right. No, you don't want to know how much it costs to put in C-clamp and all of that to keep the structural, and pour concrete and level the floor, because it was like this. So yeah, I got lots of videos for my kids to watch of the concrete being poured and all that fun
I was
stuff.
gonna say, yeah, Stan shared pictures with me kind of throughout too, and it was just like, wow. So now Liana, different ballgame for y'all, especially with that quick turnaround you're talking about. So it sounds to me like if you're talking to anybody that wants a quick turn, if they're thinking about expanding, want a quick turn, then those walls, you've got to have pretty much a clean palette that you can run with, correct? So talk a little bit about that. Has it been the philosophy there with Michael and everybody that what you end up getting is just sort of wide open, and then you can make the contours inside, you can do whatever you want to do? And is that a key? And tell me how you've managed through that.
Yes, so the new Amsterdam store that we just opened was a Goodwill store. So the only thing that we had was to take down a half wall towards the back of the building, kind of that separated, kind of like a warehousing piece of it. It is our preference to do that. It is the new model that we're going with. The Clifton Park store, which we opened last year, was a former Toys R Us. So there is a lot of opportunity like with those big box stores for us, and we are running with that. The concept is, if when you walk into the store is complete, as Jordan said, you know, the CEO's vision too, being able to see from front to back, left to right, and seeing the expanse. So the way we really look at how I want the store set up is that you look straight down and you see a centralized counter. So you always know where to go for help. Now, the salespeople are always scattered. They're not always at that counter. So you really are setting yourself up for a great customer experience to be able to shop, but not feel, you know, jumped upon. There's no podium when you walk in. There's no greeter when you walk in. They're kind of like hidden a little bit. We do categorize. So like I have a mattress gallery, dedicated space for mattresses. I do have a dedicated space for recliners in motion. And then pretty much after that, I keep it mixed as we go through. Depending on the scale and size, there are clear traffic patterns, and in other locations where I have walls like Jordan speaking about, I don't. So it really is dependent upon the space I'm going into as far as the merchandising mix and layout.
And let me just say this, not to blow smoke your direction, but I've been very fortunate because Old Brick was one of our Retailer of the Year honorees this year, and I was able to stand alongside Liana as she walked me through one of their stores. Their stores are absolutely gorgeous. They make sense, feel warm, etc. It's not by happenstance, but I mean it's kind of cool. So as you're saying that, I mean I'm visualizing. I just want everybody else to know that the stores are absolutely impeccable. So Jennifer, this is so interesting, and how this has been put together today, because these are two different approaches. But talk to us a little bit about, because this is, and I'm going to go deeper with both of them about this too, but you know, expanding or renovating sounds great on the surface. Sounds like, you know, new car smell sounds wonderful. But in the same respect, you've got to be concerned about continuity and branding, no matter if it's a renovation or whatever like this. Can you talk a little bit about, for the folks listening, how important it is to figure that piece of it out before you get into it, not just to sort of like color as you go? Would you talk a little bit about that? Because I imagine in the planning process, that is critically important.
It's very important. In fact, I mean, understanding how a retailer does things now versus how they want to do things moving forward is a big question. Like, we kind of really spend a lot of time on that when we are initially working with the client, because, you know, often when you do an expansion, you move into a new space, it's a good time to kind of reevaluate like who you are, who your customer is, who you want your customer to be in that particular new market that you're going into. Is it a different customer or is it the same one? Are you looking to attract a younger customer at that point? I mean, it brings up all kinds of things also about like your target market, who you're designing for, because a lot of times when you're doing these renovations, obviously it's to make either a store that you have now look fresher, or if you're going in and doing a new store, kind of making a new statement. So you kind of have to take the brand as it is, you know, not lose the value of it, but introduce like sort of an updated version of that. And that can be through new colors. It can be through new branding elements, new statements. Sometimes it's something like Liana said, you know, moving the customer service, for example. A lot of people have that at the back of the store still, you know, from way back when, and now moving it to a more centralized location so that it's accessible to customers. They can access it from multiple points in the store. That's a big move even for a lot of retailers to be able to, you know, do that. Also downsize it, because, you know, technology now, you don't need, you know, 20 cashier stations in order to process the payments and the orders. So a lot of times it's like trying to figure that out, and then doing outposts, you know, where a lot of your salespeople can ring up orders or have their iPads and walk around. So then that brings in technology, right? So then you got to talk about their technology strategy for the next store as well. You know, or if they're renovating again, what's your what are you moving to technology wise that will allow you to do more seamless interactions with your customers? And that affects the space too, because we can, that changes where we put the salespeople, how the salespeople talk to, customers coming into the store, whether we do have a greeter station or not. So yes, it always brings up a lot of things about the business and the business model when you do a renovation as well.
But what I want to say, and that's all, I mean, those are all home runs. The key thing is, though, you got to figure this out at the front end. This is not buy the blank palette and then let's figure out what we're going to do. I'm hearing you say you've got to have those things in order going into this as you're early in the planning cycle. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's what will make you successful. If you're kind of coming at it from behind, it's a scramble. And then you're under so much pressure to get open in order to have sales that you kind of didn't, take the time to kind of go through that process and evaluate, those kind of what you're really trying to do here by either renovating or expanding.
And I love what you said too. And it gives you the opportunity, if you want, and if you feel you need to for your business, to redefine your customer. I love that. The reason I say that is because, Jordan, I think you guys can relate to that in a big way, because the store that you went from, that you're working from to this current one. I mean, and if you, by the way, guys, if you can go on their Quality Home website or see them on social media, you're going to see a beautiful store. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you guys have really changed a little bit of your target customer based on this move as well. Can you talk a little bit about that for us?
100%. First off, Jennifer's been reading our mail over the last 2 years with all those comments in the planning. But no, we did a lot. We made a lot of mistakes. We thought we were planning properly, and we made some assumptions. We did a full scale rebrand. To that point, we tried to get to the point where all of our, just having a PowerPoint that said, here are the fonts we use, here's our name, here's what we should sound like, and trying to make it to where we sound the same on all the different channels. That was one thing. But then we changed names to Quality Home from Quality Furniture and Appliance. We had been a credit store doing installment finance forever. That was like 7 or 8, maybe 9 out of 10 tickets were on that type of financing. So very different experience, very much a promotional furniture store. We would step into medium sometimes, but that was it. We go into this new location and we literally painted the building. We put some signs on it, but we painted the building, and people are coming in going, wow, you have such this contemporary design aesthetic. Who did this? And we're like, some dumb guys that painted a box. And so now people are coming in expecting a contemporary aesthetic, and they're asking for brands that would laugh if we walked in their showroom. So we're going, are you sure you want that? Because we don't even know what that is. So over the last 6 months, when it's been challenging, we've been trying to turn our entire inventory over and adding new brands and learning stuff about the furniture business that Stan knew and loved, and I had no idea about. So now we're learning features and benefits and starting to upsell it, but also just meet the client that's coming in the door that happens to be 3 miles from where we were before.
Right.
It's none of us thought this was going to happen, that it was going to be this different.
Well, look, I think you're being a little bit self-deprecating. I mean, I think there was, there was planning that went into it, but, and I don't know that I would say you made mistakes, but you just were like, you didn't realize the scope of what was going to happen if you just changed the color and the logo on the outside of the store. But you're making Jennifer's point big time, is that those things matter, and you can be purposeful about it. And if you had to do it, let me ask you this real quick. So if you had to do it all over again, what would you have done prior to moving into the space then based on that? What would you have done differently?
Yeah, great question. We would have had the plan in place prior to the contract being executed, just like Jennifer said. We did not have the plan in place. We had the drawings. We were doing the drawings while we were closing on it, because same deal. We didn't know if we were going to get the deal done. We had walked away from it, and they came back and all of this. So getting the plan and getting the permits, that was doing your research on what the city's going to make you do, because every city's different. It was a nightmare. And unfortunately, there's a lot of lag time in between when the city decides to come by and check something, and then fire and safety, and then health and all of this. So there's like weeks in between that people are not working. They have to stop. And so that it took us a full year of renovation before we were allowed to go in. So just that was the biggest deal, is the planning
Okay.
on that side would have made a big difference. And I also, the other thing I would say is I would not have purchased. We historically did all this business with these vendors and with these specific frames that were working really, really well. So we're like, oh, this is a big store. Well, let's buy some trucks now, because we weren't like buy truckloads of merchandise because we were LTL all day long. And then we buy all this stuff and it sits there because it's wrong. It's not, so not expecting that you're just going to do this business with the same vendors that you've done. Now it's like, open it up, test the waters, give it some time.
So thank you for that, by the way. And that candor is just, I mean, there's all kinds of great takeaways from that one. Now, Leanna, little different story. Leanna, the different story. You've got a defined brand, I mean, everything is really defined. So you're what I would call, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but it's really replicating, right? You want to make sure that if I'm gonna walk into a store that says Old Brick on the outside, that there's gonna be some familiarity there. So what are some of the key planning things in advance of that to ensure that you're not indirectly, unintentionally messing with your brand? How do you guys approach that?
So I have what I call my core lineup. And then I also would say that I have different tier stores, right?
Okay.
So some stores are definitely more high-end middle, and other stores are more, lower end everyday value. So the merchandise assortment, no matter what tier store we're at, is going to be the top 30%, right? Top SKUs. Those are the ones that are in every single store, no matter what. I've
Okay.
vignetted those out from soup to nuts. So we're talking about lighting, occasional art, accessories. So those vignettes will look consistent in no matter what Bulwark you go to. The rest of the merchandise that you see has variance, right? Because obviously something that sells amazing in Queensbury, New York does not do well in Pittsfield. So I have that room to play within the merchandise that's coming into our warehouse to say, that's not working, let's try this and switch that. So I would say another big piece of that is looking at that 120 days, not being afraid to pivot and making those moves pretty consistently. So I would say that we drop product like so fast. If we don't get it first couple hits in our biggest volume store, which would be our Albany store, it's gone. And that fluidity, I believe, truly is a big part of our profitability, is that we're not afraid, and we're not afraid to try something new. We're not afraid to go to our manufacturers and ask for that floor sample discount every single time. So there's really good best practices on the buying side of the merchandise that we carry through on a consistent basis for all our locations.
Love that. And my philosophy is you don't get if you don't ask. So absolutely. love that. Jennifer, I gotta give you some space here, because man, there's been some gold that's just been it's come from the other two panelists here. Can you talk a little bit about what you've heard here, as far as Jordan talking about the planning things that they would have done differently, and also Leanna's approach as far as those top SKUs, the core lineup type of approach as well? I just want to give you a chance to really kind of jump in here.
I mean, yes. I mean, I would say, we do get a fair number of clients that come to us a little bit late in the game, and we're always sort of trying to, rush projects and kind of get them moving forward. So a lot of times I always say on the construction end or the permitting end, you can also split your permits up to try to phase things. We can kind of, we know kind of critical drawings that we have to get out that will go for permit while we're finishing up, say, millwork drawings or something else.
Mm-hmm.
So not having, also having, if a retailer has a good relationship with the contractor, that also makes a big difference, to be honest, because they trust them to get numbers, to get pricing. Without that, and having to kind of go through like a formal bid process where you're passing it out to people, contractors you've never worked with, you don't know if you're going to trust them. You'll get a really high number, you might get a really low number. It takes a long time, it stretches out the process a lot. So the more you can kind of do like a design build and kind of get going, obviously that usually helps expedite the whole timeline. But you can file for a demo permit, for example, and get that going, and then start demolition while design is still happening, for example. So there's things like that you can kind of, stage in order to try to help accelerate a process that might be behind schedule. But there's a lot of things on the, the interior that can really, cause some delays or just, throw the budget off. And Jordan mentioned one early, which is structural. We always say the minute you get into structural, that can just start to derail a whole project. One, because of the cost, but two, just because you've got to get an engineer in there, and then you go through all these sort of different options of what can be done, and then you've got to get costs to go with that. And it is important if you're, some people to have a space, and they might be taking a space that's adjacent to them, or they might be taking in the big thing right now is that there are a lot of empty boxes, but we get stores, that might be a Gap even, next to an Old Navy or something. And the one by itself is not big enough. So you need to put the two together. And so they'll negotiate on the two spaces, but how you open those up to each other is kind of critical, where you can create openings, what the cost is associated with that. The other big one is really lighting and the ceiling. So, to look at, do you have a drop ceiling in this new space that you're taking, or even your existing, the 2x2s or the 2x4 drop ceilings, or is it already an exposed ceiling? Taking out a ceiling is your probably number one expense. It is a big undertaking, but it makes a big difference if you're going to be in that space for a long time to make it feel, for one, modern, up to date, to get the volume that you need, to get the sight lines that you need, to get the best lighting that you need. So, but it's your biggest investment, and people sort of overlook that and think, oh, we're just going to leave the ceiling as is. Yeah, and then if they do that, they get terribly disappointed. It's a big push. I'm always talking to people about the ceiling. What are we going to do with the ceiling? Because, it really needs to come out.
Jeez. No,
but the sprinkler, the thing that also makes it expensive, people don't know sometimes, is those sprinkler heads. Because when you have a ceiling, they're pointed down. When you take them out, they've got to go pointed up. And so someone has to basically go in and do that. And that's just a big ticket item.
All right, a lot to think, but thank you for that. By the
Yes.
way, I had a feeling as I was watching your reactions, you're hearing all this, and you're like, I could tell you're like going, yep, I know all of this from clients you've had. A couple of great questions have come in, and I want to throw this one out. I'm going to let either Jordan or Liana jump on this one in particular, but one of the people has asked us about your accounting and or inventory management programs. So they've been helpful in expanding to new locations, or they've been obstacles even with the systems you have. And I'm going to take an assumption here about thinking about, as you're expanding, getting larger, you need to think about our internal systems, all these systems we have, compatible, are they going to support, et cetera. And Jordan, you want to start with that one? And just as far as been any issues there as far as your, whether it be accounting or inventory management?
Sure. Accounting wise, we're currently literally in the midst of trying to change it. So accounting wise, no, it has not kept up. We've been on a QuickBooks desktop program that we've got to get up to the current era. That has made for some challenging transitions there, but it does fine, but it's not anything amazing. For our inventory and store launches and everything, that has been good. We use Storus. We've been on Storus for about 6 or 7 years. We went from a DOS-based system to Storus, or maybe it's 8 years ago. And I came from a different retail background. And so, when we were trying to plan out, we knew we wanted to have more stores or grow. So trying to look a little bit ahead and go technology-wise, what would it look like so we can get as much furniture in this place as possible, to not have to have pods or not have to have workstations, because we were all on desk and desktop and managing that. How can I get us to tablets? What would have to be true for us to be like the big stores and not spend that money? And so asking that question, hey, we want this. We went and shopped a lot of stores, talked to a lot of smart retailers in the industry, and watched stuff like this, and was like, okay, what has to be true for us to be able to do this? Storus on the inventory and store operations level, that was very, very helpful to be able to add features. So that was been a big partner, but accounting, I can't help you. Sorry.
Well, hey, one bite the apple, one bite at a time here. You got to do that. Liana, let me ask you this. When you talked about, obviously when you're dealing with, being the buyer as well, when you're adding a store, I know that there's so much behind the scenes planning for that distribution, and how far you are from your nearest distribution point, or is that going to be something that's to be included as part of the store? Can you talk a little bit about that part of it? Because, hey, you can have the best design in the world, but if you
Right.
can't get the merchandise there or get it out, what are you going to do?
So Old Brick is set up with a distribution warehouse in Clifton Park, which is our main hub. So we have everything coming in and out of that building to service the inventory for all 9 locations, even the ones in Vermont. So I would say it's about a 2-hour radius. That's the furthest point from the furthest store. We do the majority of our buys on container. We also have Ashley as our top vendor. So we're running about 2 to 3 trucks a week from them. So we do not hold inventory that much of Ashley goods because we are getting that pretty, consistently. So we are looking at our buys every single week, and we're carefully managing that. We look at our inventory numbers every week. I'm on a strict budget with our CFO on where we need to be. So, it's really important about spacing the containers, so I'm not getting 3 at the same time. And also looking and planning ahead with Chinese New Year. That's always something that always is like a surprise, but then not a surprise, typing those things out. We do really are careful with freight. So we come to our vendors and we check their freight, not just what they tell us, but what we're invoiced for. And that's always another point of leverage to get that profit margin up for us. So I would say with the distribution warehouse, that allows us the flexibility to service all locations. And we are running our own delivery trucks. So that's also a huge feature in savings for profit. And as far as new growth, I always ask for that floor sample discount, like I said before, from our vendors for any new store that we open. I do not pay for POP. I do not pay for my fabrics. I always ask for advertising dollars. So the big part of the partnership and getting the floor slots from us is a partnership with our vendor. And those relationships have really carried us through, these last rocky, 3 years. We've still had big guys go out. I mean, Klausner was huge for everyone, at least in our area in the Northeast. We were able to pretty much easily absorb that with our current vendors. But if we had went all in on one, it would be very problematic.
You'd be in trouble. Yeah, it'd be a whole different ballgame.
So the diversification is really important, not to be all with one and have those relationships.
And it's interesting. I think the reason that I asked these questions is because and I think Jordan, you kind of said it. You need to have if you're going to expand, if you're going to do a major renovation, or you're going to expand into a second store or more, you need to have your base act together. You can't have a lot of holes in your current operation and expect to somehow smoothly, expand and that sort of a thing. I mean, Jordan, am I right there? I mean, that's what I'm kind of hearing you guys talk about is, from some of the things you're talking about that were your challenges for y'all.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's going to magnify the mistakes you're currently making, and add new levels and layers of complexity, as well, if you're not counting the cost beforehand and getting, out of an abundance of counselors, there's wisdom. So trying to make sure and have good, smart people in your corner. And then if you don't have them, just asking people and trying to find anybody that can give you good advice.
And get those floor sample discounts. That's what I'm
Yeah,
so Jennifer, I want to ask you a couple of things. There's a couple of questions that have come in advance that I wanted you to talk about. I know it's hard to maybe refine it down to this granular, but what should someone for a general renovation, how much time, what's the length of time here they should think in their head that it's going to take soup to nuts to get something like that done? Let's talk renovation, and then let's talk store expansion as well. I'm just trying to wonder if you, through your experience, give an idea about timelines for people.
Yes, although Old Brick is kind of breaking that record.
Oh, let me tell you, well, hey, they're not retailer of the year for nothing. I mean, it's just like, man, it's so impressive.
I
So
think
impressive.
there's an exception for
I
sure.
will tell you that I'm there every day, and so is the owner. So we're there every day pushing those contractors, and the owner does act as the general contractor himself, which is huge.
Well,
you know,
that-
Jennifer was
and that's
saying.
been, and Jennifer, before you jump in, that's one thing I was going to mention earlier that's critically important. And Jordan, I know that you and Stan will completely amen this one, is that you also have to realize that you've got to be present, because your contractor, there can be one tiny little thing that you need to clarify with them that can stop the entire project for a day or more if they don't get that answer. And if you're not there and readily able just to answer even the small stuff, I mean, it can add days and dollars. And Jennifer, I see you nodding. Please, let's make sure that people hear that too, that you can't just be, oh yeah, I hired my contractor, they're going to do their thing and I can, worry about my other business. Not the case, right?
Not the case. It's very hands-on. I mean, even if you're opening in a new location, which is not close to your home or your current store, you still have to go a couple of days a week usually. Some people get apartments, rent out a place, and so they can, be there on a consistent basis. You've got to really oversee. You can't trust that a contractor is going to know everything. You've got to be there, answer questions, because things come up in the field that you don't expect. Even with the best planning, I mean, there are definitely things that can derail. Certain material doesn't come in on time. You've got to find another solution for that. Something, was discovered when they opened up a wall, and now they've got to keep, a piece of plumbing that's there or something. I mean, there's just, no matter what it is, there will be something. I mean, I plan on there being something. So that's the most you can do. Plan for some surprises. But I mean, a general timeline, it always depends on just how extensive the renovation is. If it's something where we're taking a store, like we're doing lots of different types of store conversions, like a Sears store right now. We've done J.C. Penney's, we've done Macy's stores, we've done a Toys R Us, we've done an Old Navy. It just depends on the nature of the store and how clean of a box you're getting. So if the box is not clean, I mean, it takes a lot. I mean, they can do demo in say 2 weeks, typically. Demo is probably one of the fastest things, and you want to be there during demo. You want to see, how they're blowing out the store, what you're discovering, the uneven concrete floors, that opens up a whole different thing, because you need to level those, and you're not going to be able to put LVT or carpet down as easily if they're not level. And even if you leave them unlevel and let the concrete remain exposed, you might have to then dig some trenches because you need some power. Where's the existing power in the store? If you've got power recliners and you've got mattresses that are on adjustable bases, you need a power source. Well, people forget, oh, well, there's no power around here. What am I going to do? So where's this power going to come from? I mean, it is a big can of worms in some instances, but the construction process itself, if it goes smoothly, could, be a couple of months, 2 to 3 months. But if it doesn't go, or it has a lot of hiccups with the permitting, or there's just general delays, I mean, 6 to 12 months, I mean, easy, no problem.
Okay. So you can have, I mean, clearly what we've been hearing loud and clear so far through this webinar today is that you do have it in your hands, though, a lot of it, to steer the time frame by just being attentive to everything that's going on. I have to ask a hopelessly Mark question, because these are the kind of questions I like to ask. And Liana, this is specifically for you.
Okay.
When you have multiple stores, everybody takes pride in where they work. And I always worry about the fact that you've got, we're just going to call it new store smell. You've got team members that are in the new place, and it might be branded similar to everybody else, but it's like, it's the shiny diamond now. Wow. Yeah. That's the store, right? Can you talk a little bit culturally about the standpoint of how you manage, how you guys have managed all the rest of the team to realize that, okay, I might be in the oldest store, but you know what I'm saying? The new store always it's like a new baby, right? It gets the most attention. Is that something culturally that you got to be aware of, and how you sell that to everybody to keep everybody's morale up with this expanding environment?
So Old Brick is unique because I have a team of 2 visuals, and we travel out to the stores every week. So I have somebody in all 9 locations all week long. So with that, and having a body who's going to be in your store and to just do that, sofa flop, to, hang new art, to be able to change vignettes over on a weekly basis, really that touch point means that those stores are getting attention. Now, I also have renovations happening simultaneously with store openings. So there's this constant flow of change happening. And we do rely a lot on our in-house employees. So I have gentlemen who can do painting, who can do light electrical, who can do light plumbing. We own some of our machines for, grinding the concrete, which is how we do our new stores. So it's all like epoxied. Michael himself does it. So we do have ownership within our stores and our staff and the people who we hire to really up the ante. And no one's really afraid to, get their hands dirty, which it's really, that's the type of culture we're in. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I enjoy working here very much. As stressful as it can be, as many balls in the air as we have, it's always a constant force forward.
So buy-in from everybody's critical. I totally get it.
Yeah.
Now, Jordan, a little bit of a different question for you. It's wonderful to have the ribbon cutting and to walk in and to stand at the front door and just say, man, beautiful store. Whew. We did it, right? Jennifer's like, let's say she's your store designer. You guys are high-fiving, and man, doors open, we did it. Now, however, you've got a new palette. You've got a changing customer base. Are you finding that you have to be aware? Would you say to anybody expanding or doing a huge renovation, you've got to be aware that you're going to be really investing more time and doing more to keep it fresh? Because the worst thing you want to do is to create this beautiful thing and then it just sits there. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think you guys have had to deal with some of that already in your new space.
Sure. Finding or positions exist today that didn't before, including in-store, just a floor manager that manages putting things around where they're supposed to. Making sure that we're planning out transfers and the hour changes at the store and expanding hours and watching traffic, constantly being downstairs and asking and mixing it up with our team to find out what are customers asking for, and then just literally having them write it down for us or send us the information so we can go, okay, why didn't this person buy? Because so many people want to come in and see, wow, you renovated this movie theater. Cool, great. It's this new thing. We all have this thing. We want to go to the new thing. And, whatever it is, a Popeye's chicken I don't even like. I saw it open up and I was like, oh, I want to go there because it's new. I don't know why, but it's in me too. But, so we have so many people walking in and seeing all of the newness and not buying. And we're going, okay, well, we can't have that. We've got to figure this out. So we're still trying stuff. We're having, and we're asking plenty of people because, we opened December 1. And right around the perfect time in the furniture business this last year. It's been amazing. It's so easy. Everybody can just write business. No, it's terrible. It's really hard. So now we're trying to figure it out and do the same things that we did at a smaller scale. Now we're going, okay, the decisions we make today have much larger ramifications. And so making sure that culture, like you said, we had a good culture before. Now we have to invest in it even more because communication, things get taken out of context or people run with decisions that we make. And we're like, no, I just needed to put a sofa in this slot because it was a hole. And we had to figure this out because we were out of product for whatever reason. And so that's part of it. And to the question you asked before, we have 2 stores. I still have a store that's 11,000 square feet in a shopping center. And so it's about going and being honest with your crew and saying, hey, y'all, this is going to help everybody. This is going to help us have more buying power to be able to get you merchandise. And then you cannot forget about your other store or your other stores. You can't forget about them because you'll lose your shirt. It's just, you've got to make sure that you're talking to your team and still supporting your other stores and having a good leadership structure. But again, if we're talking to us 5 years ago in a really small store, really stressed out, this full scale renovation sounds like a pipe dream. You're like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. It's even just resetting your floor and having better lighting and making your furniture the star instead of whatever you think the star is. We thought it was our service or anything else. No, the furniture is the star. If you can make that just wow people, even in not a great location that you're just updating a little bit, that there's definitely value there, even before you go crazy on like we did.
Well, and I love what you said too, is you do have to pay attention to the team at the old store, right? Because you've got the new, the new shiny object, new shiny diamond, like I said, and you don't want to forget where you came from, and you don't want them to feel unmotivated or not, receiving proper attention. No, I think you're 100%. Great question just came in, Jennifer. This is for you all day long. If you're doing a renovation, do you suggest that people keep their stores open during that? Not, how do you suggest that happen? It may depend renovation to renovation, but I get where the question's coming from, because there's issues in both, both going both ways on that.
Always. You just keep it open. You never close it. If you were to close it, you would tank your business before you reopen. You just can't afford to. You have to sort of position it. You have to phase it. And you have to very strategically figure out, how you're going to do it. And a lot of times you start from the back to the front, or from one side to the other side, and you close off that part of the store. We'll put drop cloth or, some little basically partitions. You put a sign, coming soon, excuse us, we're renovating, we're making a better experience for you, right? You've got to kind of make the what would seem as a disruption a positive for the customer. It's like, make sure you come back and see our store when it's complete, but shop now, we've got everything there is still to offer. A lot of times the biggest problem though is you're losing square footage, because
Sure.
That product then kind of needs to go somewhere. So you've also got to strategically figure out, how a lot of times people will put some product on clearance. Let's just get it out. We need to move this out in order to create the space so that we can do the renovation there. Then we'll open that up. We can move the new furniture in there, and then we got to tackle another piece of the store. It does definitely, draw out your timeline. I mean, something like this can go on for a good solid year, because you're just doing it sort of chunk by chunk, but at no point can you close the store, in my opinion.
But one of your areas of expertise, one of your many areas of expertise, is on customer flow, et cetera, through the stores, et cetera. So you've just got to really keep in mind that you're not doing it in a way where you're creating dead pockets and things of that sort. So you really have to be mindful, not just of, oh, we're going to put this tarp here and hey, we're renovating, right? So there's got to be purpose there too. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. You don't want to create blockages, or, I've gone into stores and they've just piled all this furniture up and you can't get through it. You still can't do that. You really do have to, clear out space in your distribution center and move some of the product out until you can bring it back. Obviously put it in your warehouse, clear it out through a tent sale even. I have had clients do that. They just sell it as much as they can in a weekend, do a big promotional event, and get rid of some of that excess product so that they basically can clear out space in order to do it. It's a challenge, but we do phasing plans a lot of times as part of, the design process. And once we kind of have a master plan of what it is that we want to do, then we've got to figure out, okay, how are we going to do this piece by piece so that, we're not losing customers coming in the door.
And I'm just saying, embrace it, give every staff member a reflective vest and a hard hat. And,
Good.
I'm just.
Yeah, you got to be creative to make it a positive.
Yeah.
Instead of dwelling on the fact that this is so disruptive,
I'm being flippant, but I'm also there's truth in humor, right? I mean, I really feel like that's you. Yeah, I love what you said. You got to embrace it so the whole team understands. Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a pain in the neck, but it's the end result we're going for here. And we want to bring the customers along. I think I heard somebody talk about that one time about a renovation project where they said we want to make sure the customer feels like they're part of the process, which you don't think about that, right? You generally think about it the other way, that they're well, we don't want to, involve them or inconvenience them. And instead it's like, no, expectations, right? Let them know what's going on. Jordan, real quick, because this was interesting with y'all. You did, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you guys do like a parking lot sale or event or something leading up to, and I don't even know if you guys were open there yet, but also
we
I thought it
weren't
was,
open.
see, I think that's unique too. Let's talk a little bit about that as you're also opening that new location, you can do things to sort of build the excitement and to push people there even before the doors are open. Talk about that, because I think it's a great story.
Yeah, we were about 7 months into the renovation. We were not allowed to open the building till who knows when at the time. And so we ran an extension cord, put a tent out and put a sign and just said furniture tent sale. And then we had our internet and Wi-Fi set up already so we could operate off of one little desktop on Wi-Fi. And then we asked one of our vendors, local vendors, said, hey, you want to put a bunch of stuff in this tent? Because we didn't have much inventory that we could put in there. And then we'll put a little bit of ours and maybe some mattresses from a different vendor that we could do a special buy on, and did a consignment deal to try to generate some cash and really just some excitement. It's crazy. People driving by on a highway, seeing a tent, they just pull in. And so we were able to start getting people on our list of like, oh, these are from this other zip code, because even 3 miles away was a different zip. People never heard of us. So now we're able to start saying, hey, you saw us at the tent. Let's show you what it actually looks like now. And so it was interesting. It wasn't like gangbusters, but it was a bunch of those little things are what added up. I wish I could say there was one big thing that we did that was amazing. It's not. We did a bunch of little weird stuff like that, trying to get the word out and say, please come. Please tell somebody to come and see us. Yeah.
I think it's great. And then I guess, Liana, the thing I would ask you is, as far as the process of once you guys come close to opening, how do you guys manage that, that piece of it? Is it a soft open? I mean, how do you sort of start the whole thing? Tell us a little bit about that.
So we always do soft opening, no matter what. As soon as we can open the doors, we open the doors, even if we're not technically allowed to sell it. It's the excitement, it's the curiosity of the customer. They see the construction, they see activity, and they just can't help themselves usually. They want to peek in, right, and see what's happening. And also it's the opportunity to work out the kinks. Does the technology work? Is everything working the way it's supposed to? Working out all those details. So yes to the soft opening always.
Awesome. Jennifer, we got just like 2 minutes. I want to give you sort of the last word here. What would you say are the things that you'd like anybody watching this to walk away with when it comes to their thoughts about renovating or expanding to another location? What are just one of the maybe final 1 or 2 thoughts you have?
Say don't be scared of it. I hope we didn't intimidate anybody with like our story, right? Because it's a very exciting thing to take on, is expanding or deciding to renovate. And you have to keep renovating your store to be competitive. You can't just let it sit for 20 years. I tell people a major renovation every 10 years, really, and then updates, really you should look at updates every 2 years, 2 to 3 years, as far as a refresh. And that sometimes that's just paint, some new finishes, maybe changing something here or there. But that's otherwise, you've got to kind of keep making that investment in your retail space in order to just keep staying competitive. You just can't sit there and then decide 20 years later it just needs a full renovation. At that point, it doesn't work. At that point, it's too late. It really is too late. So
yeah, and I hope we've not intentionally been negative. I think we're just trying to be real. You don't want it to also be one of those pie in the sky things where, oh, we're going to renovate and it's going to be just easy and there's going to be, I love the fact that the 3 of you have done a great job today of really kind of talking about what sort of goes into it in advanced thought process and how to really make this work. Because you're right, at the end of the day, you want to come out with something at the end that just really is spectacular. And I think that We've had two good examples here today. I mean, like I said, please go online, look at Quality Home, look at Old Brick, and you're going to see a couple of very different, but very, really impressive retail spaces. I want to thank our guest today, man. This hour cranked on by. Jennifer McGee, founder and creative director of retail in the city. Thank you for bringing your expertise in design and all of this with you today. Appreciate that. Jordan Barrick with Quality Home in Mesquite, Texas. Appreciate your candor today has been awesome. And don't call them mistakes. They're just you guys are trying stuff. You're figuring it out. And Liana Runco from Old Brick. I encourage anybody, if you're up in that neck of the woods, to walk into one of their stores, because Liana and her team, incredibly gifted merchandisers, and those stores are absolutely gorgeous. So I want to mention to you again, myhfa.org/webinar. You can find this and all other webinars. Go there. It's a wonderful resource. And I want to once again thank our guests, and always I wish you good health and great sales. I'm Mark Schumacher on behalf of everybody at HFA. We'll see you next time.